Hi, thank you for meeting with me again, Dr. Berry.
Sure.
This is our post-observation meeting via Zoom. So I do have another PowerPoint for us to view. So I'm going to share my screen and it'll just help guide us towards reflection and maybe some next steps for us to initiate.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so let me share. And I'm just going to do, let me see if I can just share the PowerPoint this time. I'm getting a little bit better with Zoom. Do you see my
I understand.
All right. Oh, and there's a guest with us. Hopefully he'll be a little quiet.
That's great. That's fine.
That's the great thing about Zoom. You can do it anywhere.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me slideshow. Start from the beginning. All right, so you can see my slideshow.
Yes, ma'am.
This is our post-conference meeting, and we're just going to go over what we observed, how you feel about the lesson. We'll look at some data. I did collect a little bit of data from your chosen technique. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to start by reviewing the purpose of this meeting, a check-in and a little self-reflection. We're going to review our self-improvement goal that we chose together. We're going to discuss the collected data, any alternative methods or explanations that we may need to discuss, and then some next steps. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, so this is still the same. The purpose of this meeting, we perform clinical supervision to help teachers become more effective. And there's our 10 highly effective teacher traits. And we did decide to focus on with-itness. So that's what we are doing. So how do you feel the lesson went?
I feel like the lesson went really well for someone who's never implemented this strategy. And I know we'll get to this, but after having, watched my swivel, I felt good for it being the first time. I did feel like obviously it's going to be pretty obvious that it was the first time I implemented the strategy. But I do feel like moving forward, that would continue to get better. So overall, I feel good about it. And I'm probably going to be somewhere around that 3 again, but I think it's going to get even better as I become, make it kind of a part of my practice.
That's great to hear. Did you feel like there was a difference from before when you were not so aware of that?
I do. I do feel like I was more intentional, but I'll be just completely transparent. I really need to even be more intentional if that's possible, because I found myself getting distracted. I would kind of maybe start in quadrant 1 and be a little more distracted than what I wanted to be. Or for example, I kind of really wanted to segment it out. I knew my students would be working, doing kind of a lot of independent work. And I feel like I need to be more intentional with the time that I spend in the quadrant, if that makes sense. And so what I'm looking kind of at, what went well, kind of what went right, wrong. It's the timing. I think that's the part that I really have to focus on moving forward, like being more equitable. I made it to each quadrant, but the timing wasn't equitable at all.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think I agree. For implementing it for the first time, like I think you did an amazing job, and I could really see the intentionality behind what you were doing. Yeah. But I do understand that in order to grasp, like how long you're really spending in each quadrant, it is going to take a little bit of practice, but it will get better. I promise.
Yeah. And I know, and it to me, and I love we don't have this conversation. It's very easy to talk with you, but obviously have an opportunity to watch the swivel, and you did too. And I know we can kind of like sort of laugh about this, but clearly you saw how much time I spent in quadrant 2. And it was like, whoa, this is way disproportionate to the other. So, but yeah, thank you for saying that. But that is absolutely something that I need to, and maybe we can talk about that in a little bit, maybe some ideas you might have too about how I can kind of make sure that doesn't happen the next time or something,
Yeah, sounds good. We will get to that. And actually, I'll show you the data in a few minutes, and you might think that you spend a lot of time in quadrant 2, but really in comparison to the others, you're going to see that it's not that great of a difference. So
Okay, good.
like I said, it's going to just take time to get that feeling
Yeah.
for it. And, some
Okay,
teachers even rely on other tools to help them kind of keep track of that time. But
good.
we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
All right. So just to reinstate what we had previously said and concluded, that we were focusing on classroom management techniques and skills. And we selected a goal of creating intentional teacher movement. And we're doing this through the quadrant method in order to occupy the whole room. Do you feel like this was working for your classroom specifically? Did the students react to your movement?
I think so. I mean, one of the things that I tried to do too, and I hope this was apparent in the video, I felt like it, but again, a fresh set of eyes, so to speak. Speaking of eyes, I feel like I tried to be intentional, not just with like my body position, but then also like looking at students. And that seemed apparent for the most part when I watched the video back. So I was really pleased about that, because I think that's really important as well, to make that connection with the student. So I kind of wanted your thoughts about that, or what you think I could do differently. That was just kind of my perception of that, having looked at it.
Yeah, so I agree. I think it does show through on the video how intentional you were with, not only like physical movements around the room, but, just kind of acknowledging with eyes or comments like to different sectors of the classroom. And I think the students really started to kind of pick up on, hey, she's not, occupied over here all the time. So I can't get away with as much, or I need to really stay focused because I know she's coming over here next. So I think it really shows through, and I think the kids are picking up on that pretty quickly.
That is great, because I'm really pleased that you said that, because this is something that I want to be intentional about, but I want it to be a common practice, and not just something that I can try every now and again. This is like, I see this as something like I'm actually changing. It's part of my classroom culture now, in the climate that I'm creating, and hopefully that'll just continue to strengthen as kids realize this is just what we do. So
I'm glad to hear you say that, it's kind of like going to be the classroom culture from now on. I mean, that's really like a big step towards your growth as a teacher, and just, having all those tools under your belt to just continue, great teaching and meeting the students where they need to be met.
Yeah.
All right, so jump into some data here. I did just kind of collect a little bit of data on your 4 quadrants. And, you can see that a lot of it is pretty similar. Just take a second, look at the numbers. It looks pretty good. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's funny because you kind of, with you, and I appreciate this, because you were looking at it kind of through a different lens, where I was more focused on, okay, am I making it to each quadrant? You were able to really kind of drill down more. And this is so helpful for me, because as I mentioned earlier, not really, being more, I guess, strategic like you were. It appeared when I was watching the video that like, okay, I've been over here a while, but in reality, not about the same. It looks to me, it's like, okay, well, I'm in, quadrant 1, and I kind of, mingle a little bit into 3, and then it's like I'm bookends spending time. And so it's encouraging, because it looks fairly consistent, but clearly, that kind of top, because I know what I'm thinking about, how we were doing this in the classroom, that top kind of left corner, I've got to really, I've got to spend a little bit more time there.
Right. And I mean, I'm glad to hear you, like, you're making all these conclusions about the data, because like you said, you thought you spent so much time in certain quadrants, but really, when you get down to it, it's, it's a feeling. Yeah, you got to kind of get a better feeling for it, and you will develop that over time of practice. But you did amazing with the first time implementing this in your classroom.
Hey, at least I can say that I did get to every area. So I think that is, a tiny accomplishment.
A good accomplishment.
That's,
It's
that's
great.
a win. That's a small win. So,
So our data is showing that you're getting closer to spending more equal time in each quadrant, and you are making it to each quadrant. And now we can kind of see maybe where we need to spend a little bit more time versus the others. So that's good to know.
and you know what's interesting about that, and what I really appreciate about that, I'm thinking about this now, and what I think I also need to do a better job, there are some barriers, there's some actual physical barriers. If you remember from looking at the video, I had like some flexible seating, and I kind of, it's not cluttered, that's not the right word, but I'm wondering now, kind of processing this, if I need to kind of open that space up. I'm wondering if just, I'm not, I guess subconsciously thinking, okay, well, there's a barrier here. So I'm kind of having to like walk around this stuff to get to the kids. That really opened my eyes up to that just now as we're talking about this. And I think that's something that I'm going to kind of go and assess and be like, okay, I need to move this stuff out of the way, because I think that might be playing into that just a bit. Maybe.
Right. And yeah, and that's definitely a very good explanation for why maybe some areas are more accessible. And others, if it's harder to get over there or whatever, then you're not going to be over there as often. So that's kind of where I was going to take us next is, explaining maybe why the data is skewed the way it is. And we come up with the environment could be a reason. Do you think of any other like things that may help you make it over there besides, kind of moving things around?
Gosh, and I really need to think through that one a little bit. That's a really good question. Now that I kind of know, I think I would appreciate a little bit more time just to kind of reflect on that. And I want to hear your thoughts on this, but now that I sort of know that more definitively, I think I need to process, because I think right off the bat, I thought about the barriers, but I think if I can just have a little more kind of time to reflect on that, I might have a better answer for you.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I'm sure there's some other things I can look at with those two particular areas. So I would say, can I get back to you with that one?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, after some time to think on it, and maybe even, like doing a little research to see, maybe there's something out there. I know one technique, a tool that some teachers use to keep them moving throughout the classroom is kind of like an ongoing like stopwatch or timer.
Oh,
So that they're knowing, when to move. And it's not something obvious to the kids, because then you would kind of defeat the purpose of the, unseen movement. But like just like a little like vibration of like a watch or a phone.
That's a great idea. Yeah,
kinda
I didn't even think about that. And it's very, like you said, it's very simple, but that just didn't even really cross my mind. But what a great way to kind of keep me on track, to sort of prompt me to like obviously continue doing what I'm doing if I'm helping a student or something like that. But if it's appropriate, then to kind of move on. I like that. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
All right. Well, we're nearing the end of our conversation, and I've got a couple of next steps for us to go over. So you're going to continue intentionally moving around the 4 quadrants of your room. And I'm actually going to arrange for an unannounced, very informal observation to just get some follow-up data, so that we can, continue our discussion and our conversation, and maybe even get some new and more information and tools to figure out how to keep your classroom management going. And yeah, we'll discuss the new data that I collect. And I'll set a calendar invite for that. So I just want you to focus on your next steps as the teacher. What are you going to do?
Okay. Yeah, I like all of that. I appreciate the feedback. I think to make something kind of become part of your practice, and to make it, more of just a habit or something that you do, it's just going to take a little time. And so I'd like to commit to, being intentional about that, so that hopefully that just kind of does become something that I don't even really have to think about as much. But initially I do, because I'd like to really, perform this strategy well, because I'm already seeing some slight benefits. And I feel like the longer that I do this, the better it will be in terms of the things that you even mentioned, with like kids maybe even getting to the point where they're correcting some of their own behaviors. Because what you said, they know that I'm going to come over there, or they know that that's going to be something that is going to get addressed. Whereas maybe before I learned about this strategy, I missed it because I wasn't there. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So I just appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate the time that you're spending to kind of help me do something that is not that difficult. You just have to be intentional about it. But then you also gave me some good pointers about, what can I do? Something as simple as a timer to kind of just keep me more on track. So very, very doable, I feel like.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today and your honesty and being open to everything. And I just really appreciate everything that we've discussed, and you're doing a great job. And I
Thank you.
want to communicate that to you. And I'll end us with another quote. This
Okay.
one says, "A good education can change anyone. A good teacher can change everything."
Well, that's good. That's very inspiring. It's a good way to end.
All right. Well, I will follow up with you with emails and calendar invites. And, you can reach out to me if you need anything or if I can do anything to help you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.